Shadow of Defiance. The Galactic Assembly Hall gleamed like a massive geode suspended in the void of space, its crystalline facets catching the light of 3 distant suns. Inside, representatives of 87 spacefaring civilizations debated matters of interstellar trade and territorial disputes with the practiced calm of those who had known peace for centuries. Captain Nora Vega strode through the assembly's grand entrance, her boots clicking against the polished obsidian floor. She wore the charcoal uniform of Earth's United Defense Force, emblazoned with the silver constellation emblem that marked her as part of humanity's diplomatic corps. But unlike the usual envoys who came bearing requests and concessions, Nora carried something else entirely. The human representative approaches, announced the Solani attendant, its translucent appendages rippling with bioluminescent warnings. High Arbiter Kresh, a towering Avaxi with iridescent scales and 6 calculating eyes, leaned forward from the central dais. Captain Vega, your arrival is unexpected. Earth's scheduled address is not for another 17 cycles. Nora stopped at the speaker's platform, her dark eyes scanning the chamber. Representatives from across the galaxy stared back, some curious, others disdainful. Humanity remained the newest addition to the assembly, barely 2 centuries into spacefaring capability, while most members measured their cosmic history in millennia. High Arbiter, esteemed representatives, Nora began, her voice calm but unyielding. I come not to request but to inform. For too long, humanity has been relegated to the fringes of galactic politics, our colonies restricted to resource-poor systems, our technological advancement hindered by selective enforcement of assembly regulations. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Turnuk delegate, a massive feathered being, trilled in indignation. The human speaks of restrictions when they have advanced more rapidly than any species in recorded history. The regulations exist to prevent catastrophic technological leaps. Nora's lips curved into a slight smile. And yet the Turnuk hegemony maintains a fleet of quantum-shifted warships that violate 6 different assembly protocols. The Mradi Combine has weaponized stellar manipulation. The Avaxi themselves possess planet cracker technology. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. We've noticed the discrepancy between what is allowed and what is permitted. You accuse this assembly of hypocrisy. The High Arbiter's scales darkened with anger. I state facts, Arbiter. And I bring another. Humanity is no longer playing by these uneven rules. She raised her arm, activating the holographic projector embedded in her wrist unit. Above the chamber, a 3-dimensional image materialized, a fleet of ships unlike any the assembly had seen. Their hulls were midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting light, their shapes fluid and predatory. Energy signatures pulsed along their lengths, distorting the very space around them. The Meridian Fleet, Nora announced. 17 capital ships and 42 support vessels, powered by what we call shadow drive technology, what you would call dark matter manipulation. The chamber erupted in chaos. Several delegates rose from their seats, mandibles and tentacles and appendages gesticulating wildly. Dark matter technology had been universally banned after the Void Wars, when entire star systems had been collapsed into singularities. This is madness, screeched the Kilvari representative, its gelatinous form pulsing with agitation. Dark matter manipulation destabilizes the very fabric of space-time. You endanger not just yourselves, but all life in the galaxy. High Arbiter Kresh slammed a ceremonial staff against the floor, restoring the semblance of order. Captain Vega, if what you present is real and not some elaborate deception, you force the assembly to consider humanity a threat to galactic stability. Such technology is prohibited for a reason. Its consequences cannot be contained. Nora's expression remained impassive. We're well aware of the risks, Arbiter. We're also aware that humanity has been systematically undermined by this assembly since our admission. Our colonies suffer while your core worlds thrive. Our scientific breakthroughs are regulated while yours are weaponized. The Meridian Fleet represents our refusal to accept this status quo any longer. You speak of resistance when you should speak of annihilation, hissed Delegate Thrix of the Sylvani Consensus, its voice like rustling leaves. If these abominations exist as you claim, the combined forces of the Assembly will have no choice but to eliminate them, and possibly humanity itself. Nora's eyes hardened. The fleet isn't here for your approval, Delegate. It's here as a notification. As we speak, the Meridian vessels are moving into strategic positions throughout Assembly space. Not to attack, not yet, but to demonstrate that humanity will no longer be confined or constrained. The Assembly Hall fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on every being present. High Arbiter Kresh's scales had paled to an ashen gray. This is not a negotiation, Nora continued. This is a recalibration of power. The Assembly has 24 Earth hours to acknowledge humanity's full sovereignty, remove all restrictions on human expansion, and grant us equal access to all technological exchanges. The alternative is a demonstration of what dark matter technology can accomplish when applied with precision. You threaten war, the Arbiter said, voice hollow with disbelief. I offer a choice, Nora corrected. Equality or consequence. She turned to leave, but the High Arbiter's voice stopped her. Captain Vega, surely you understand what you've done today. Even if we were to accede to your demands, the trust between humanity and the Assembly would be irreparably damaged. You would forever be viewed as a potential extinction-level threat. Nora looked back over her shoulder. Better to be feared than exploited, Arbiter. You've had 2 centuries to treat us as equals. Now you'll have 24 hours to decide if you can live with the consequences of your failure. As she walked away, the Assembly erupted again, but this time with an undercurrent of fear that had never before permeated these hallowed chambers. Nora kept her pace steady, her expression neutral, betraying none of the turmoil within. What she had just done would either secure humanity's future or condemn it to oblivion. Outside the chamber, in a service corridor rarely used by dignitaries, a shadow detached itself from a maintenance alcove. Nora's hand moved to her sidearm, but relaxed when she recognized the figure. They believe you, said the newcomer, a slight human man with pale eyes and a face that seemed designed to be forgettable. They should, Nora replied. The hologram was perfect. Not just perfect, it was terrifying. The man fell into step beside her. The Assembly's security protocols are already activating. 7 battle groups have been placed on high alert. The Avaxi are evacuating their leadership from the station. Nora nodded. And the other part? Confirmed. There's movement in the dead zone. Whatever's been hiding out there, your little speech just made it nervous. We're tracking unusual energy signatures consistent with your report. So I was right. You were right, the man agreed. Something's been watching us from beyond the Assembly's borders, something that made the Assembly deliberately keep humanity weak and divided. Nora's jaw tightened. How long do we have? Hours, maybe. The Assembly's too busy panicking about your imaginary fleet to notice the real threat assembling at their doorstep. They reached a small, unmarked shuttle bay where a nondescript transport waited. Nora paused before the entry ramp. Is the horizon actually ready? She asked, referring not to a phantom fleet, but to humanity's one true technological marvel, a ship that had cost Earth everything to build in secret. The man nodded. Admiral Chen says it's as ready as it'll ever be. One ship against whatever's coming might not be enough, but it's all we've got. One ship with the only actual dark matter drive in human possession, Nora corrected. It'll have to be enough. She glanced back toward the Assembly Hall. I've just made myself the most hated human in galactic history, Eli. Let's make sure it wasn't for nothing. As their shuttle detached from the station, alarm klaxons began to sound throughout the Assembly complex, but none of the panicked officials rushing to emergency shelters noticed the small transport slipping away, nor did they detect the massive objects moving through the darkness at the edge of their territory. Objects that had been waiting, watching, and were now revealing themselves at last. The real war was about to begin, and despite Nora's bluff, humanity stood alone against it. Eclipse Protocol. Admiral Helena Chen stood on the observation deck of Earth Orbital Command, her weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass as she gazed at the gleaming vessel suspended in the construction cradle below. Unlike the fictitious ships of Captain Vega's hologram, the EDS Horizon was a technological masterpiece grounded in brutal reality. Humanity's desperate gamble against extinction. "Status report," she demanded, not turning from the view. Colonel Takeda stepped forward, his uniform crisp despite having worked 30 hours straight. "Dark matter containment is stable at 98%. Weapons systems online. Shields at full capacity. The crew is aboard and ready for deployment. And our guest, the Kethnar observer, is secured in the diplomatic quarters, as agreed." Chen nodded. The Kethnar had been the only assembly species to secretly ally with humanity, recognizing the threat lurking beyond the galactic rim. Their advanced sensors had first detected the anomalies 3 years ago, but the assembly had dismissed their warnings as paranoia. "Any word from Captain Vega? Her shuttle has cleared assembly space and is en route to the rendezvous point. ETA 4 hours. Chen finally turned, her dark eyes sharp with determination. "Begin final preparations for departure. Activate Eclipse Protocol." Across the solar system, humanity held its collective breath. For 2 centuries, they had struggled at the margins of galactic society, their expansion restricted, their innovation stifled. The official narrative claimed these restrictions were for their own good. A young species needed guidance, protection from its own ambition. Few questioned why humanity alone faced such severe limitations. Now they knew the truth. They were being contained deliberately, kept weak by design. In the depths of space, beyond the assembly's carefully monitored borders, something ancient had awakened. The Harbingers, as the Kethnar called them. A race so old they had witnessed the birth of the current galactic arm. They moved through the void like predators, harvesting entire civilizations when they grew too powerful, too threatening. The assembly hadn't been protecting the galaxy from humanity. They had been protecting the galaxy from the attention humanity might draw. The horizon detached from its cradle, its hull gleaming with the dull sheen of materials never before synthesized by human hands. At its core pulsed the shadow drive, the only functioning dark matter engine humanity had managed to create. Unlike the fictional fleet Captain Vega had presented to the assembly, this single ship represented the culmination of Earth's scientific achievement, built at a cost that had nearly bankrupted the unified government. "All stations report ready," Colonel Takeda announced, awaiting final authorization. Admiral Chen placed her palm on the security scanner. "Authorization Chen Alpha 7 Eclipse. Deploy the horizon." The ship's engines flared to life, not with the familiar blue of conventional drives, but with a deeper radiance that seemed to bend the light around it. The horizon accelerated smoothly, quickly becoming a distant speck against the blackness of space. Aboard the vessel, Commander Elijah Wright settled into the captain's chair. As the most experienced deep space pilot in Earth's fleet, he had been handpicked for this mission, despite his reputation for insubordination. "Shadow drive engaging in 3, 2, 1, announced Lieutenant Park from the navigation station. The sensation that followed defied description. A momentary pressure against the mind rather than the body, a feeling of being simultaneously stretched and compressed. The stars outside the viewport smeared and then snapped back into focus, but in a completely different configuration. "Transition complete," Park reported. "We've covered approximately 12 light years in under 4 seconds. Wright allowed himself a small smile. "Looks like the eggheads got something right for once. Set course for the rendezvous coordinates." As the horizon continued its journey, the false narrative Captain Vega had spun was having its intended effect. The Galactic Assembly had devolved into factions, those calling for immediate military action against Earth, those advocating for negotiation, and a growing number demanding to know why humanity had been subjected to such restrictive policies in the first place. High Arbiter Kresh faced the emergency session with diminishing authority. The human threat must be neutralized immediately. Their dark matter fleet. What fleet, precisely? Interrupted the Kethnar delegate, its crystalline form pulsing with deliberate calm. Our long-range sensors detect no such vessels. Could it be that the human captain was bluffing? Bluff or not, the intent was clear, countered the Sylvani representative. They threatened this assembly with technology that could unravel reality itself. Perhaps, the Kethnar delegate suggested, we should ask why they felt the need to make such a desperate play. The restrictions placed on human expansion have been unusually severe, even for a newly spacefaring species. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Avaxi High Prelate, superior even to the Arbiter, shifted uncomfortably on its ornate perch. Those restrictions were necessary, the prelate stated, but there was a hesitation in its voice that many noticed. Necessary for whom? The Kethanar's question hung in the air like a challenge. Before the debate could continue, a junior attendant burst into the chamber, protocol forgotten in the face of urgency. Esteemed delegates, the attendant gasped, our deep space arrays have detected massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. They match no known configuration, and they're accelerating toward assembly space. The chamber fell silent. The High Prelate's scales darkened to a deep indigo, a sign of deep distress among the Avaxi. How many? The prelate asked, its voice barely audible. Over 300 objects, ranging from cruiser to dreadnought size. They're on an intercept course with our outer colonies. In that moment, understanding dawned across the assembly. The human captain's theatrical display. The sudden revelation of non-existent dark matter ships. It hadn't been about intimidating the assembly at all. It had been about drawing something else out of hiding. At the rendezvous point, a lonely stretch of space far from any charted system, the horizon waited. When Captain Vega's shuttle finally approached, Commander Wright personally greeted her in the docking bay. Quite the performance you gave, Captain, he said as they walked briskly toward the bridge. The feeds from the assembly show they're in complete disarray. Did it work? Nor asked, ignoring the compliment. Are they coming? Oh, they're coming all right. More of them than we anticipated. The Kethnar observer is analyzing the sensor data now. On the bridge, the alien stood out starkly among the human crew, nearly 7 feet tall, with a translucent, crystalline body that refracted light in hypnotic patterns. It turned as they entered, its faceted head inclining in greeting. Captain Vega, the Kethnar said, its voice resonating like struck crystal. Your stratagem was effective. The entities my people have long feared are now fully committed to their approach. Nora studied the tactical display. How long until they reach assembly space? Approximately 18 Earth hours. They have accelerated significantly since your announcement to the assembly. They believe the galaxy's species are developing dark matter technology, a capability they cannot allow to mature. Which is exactly why the assembly has kept us technologically stunted, Nora said bitterly. They've been appeasing these harbingers for millennia, sacrificing emerging civilizations to keep the peace. The Kethanar's crystalline body dimmed slightly. My people attempted to warn the assembly centuries ago. We were dismissed as alarmists, relegated to the political margins. When we detected your species' unusual potential and saw how the assembly moved to contain you, we recognized the pattern. Commander Wright frowned at the tactical display. We have one ship against hundreds. Even with the shadow drive, those aren't odds I'd bet on. The horizon was never meant to fight them directly, Nora reminded him. We just need to get close enough to deploy the beacon. The Kethanar moved to a specialized console, its crystalline appendages interfacing with the controls. The quantum beacon is primed. If your scientists' theories are correct, it will disrupt the Harbinger's unique subspace field coherence. And if they're wrong, we'll have front-row seats to the end of human civilization, Wright added grimly. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main view screen. Captain Vega. Commander Wright. The Assembly has just contacted Earth. It seems they figured out what's really happening. Are they mobilizing their defense forces? Nora asked. Chen's expression was grim. They're evacuating their core worlds. The HFY High Council has admitted they've known about these entities for thousands of years. They've been sacrificing emerging civilizations to keep them satisfied, including us. Anger flashed across Nora's face. So they were just going to let us die? Not all of them, Chen replied. The Kethnar have publicly broken with the Assembly. They're sending what ships they can to support the Horizon. The Kethnar observer's body brightened. My people understand that if we continue this cycle of appeasement, eventually none will remain to stand against the Harbingers. Commander Wright checked the tactical display again. Kethnar vessels are fast, but they won't reach us before the Harbingers arrive. We're still on our own for the initial engagement. Nora squared her shoulders. Then we'd better make it count. Prepare for Shadow Drive jump. We're intercepting the Harbinger fleet before they reach Assembly space. As the Horizon prepared for its desperate mission, the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy was finally revealed to Earth's billions. They had never been restricted out of caution or protocol. They had been cultivated as a sacrifice, a civilization to be offered up when the ancient predators came hunting again. But humanity had refused its assigned role. With a single bluff about fictitious warships, Captain Nora Vega had forced the Harbingers to show themselves prematurely. With one real ship carrying revolutionary technology, humanity would attempt what the Assembly had never dared: to fight back against the darkness that had kept the galaxy in fearful submission for eons. The Horizon vanished in a distortion of light and space, heading toward a confrontation that would determine the fate not just of humanity, but of all the galaxy's children who had lived too long in shadow. The war for survival had begun, and for the first time in cosmic memory, the Harbingers would face an enemy that refused to be harvested.